Welcome back. Second hour here for Breakfast Extra. Let's do another big story. Now, Nigeria recorded at least 2,000 killings in the first quarter of 2025 alone, according to media-reported incidents. Now, the figures are staggering, the human toll devastating, and the implications deeply troubling. The data compiled by SBM Intelligence and also EIE Nigeria shows that Benue, Niger, and Kogi states, all part of Nigeria's middle belt, are among the worst affected by violent attacks, including terrorism, armed robbery, and communal clashes. And while Benue and Zamfara still dominate the chart, it's the growing intensity and frequency of violence in the north-central region that is sparking new alarm.
And so today we ask, why is the middle belt bleeding? Who is being held accountable? And what more can be done to protect the lives and dignity of the people in these communities? Joining us to unpack this is Ier Ichaver. She's an activist, humanitarian, and co-founder of the Sesor Empowerment Foundation, which works with internally displaced persons across Nigeria. Ms. Ichaver, many thanks for joining us. Appreciate you for doing this with us this morning. I think I butchered something there somewhere, so please forgive me. But let's get started, shall we? And let's begin with your reaction, right? The recent data is showing over 2,000 killings in just 3 months, with Benue alone accounting for a large portion of that number. What exactly is going on in the Middle East? Your reaction to what we're seeing in the Middle East? Let's start there.
Okay, so one of the entities I've been working with is a co-convener of the Middle Belt Concern. And yeah, I'll just correct my name is Ier Ichaver. So bottom line, we started working in Benue as far back as 2013, 2014, just responding to people who were displaced, supporting people who were displaced by attacks in Adeke and Adaka, for example, in Daudu, in Makudi. Daudu is near Makudi, basically. And a lot of the reports we got were that terrorist headsmen would come in, dead of the night, people would be sleeping, and they would basically just hack them, chase them off the land, and then set their cattle grazing. And if you went back, you couldn't get into your farms, and this thing was just ongoing. Of course, initially, the first was like, oh, there were these traditional, quote-unquote, conflicts or skirmishes or clashes. From time to time, they would have conflicts over land, over water. But over the years, we've seen these things escalated and has grown. We've gone to various communities across Benue, whether it is in Agatu, Aila in Agatu, where I think it was in March, 2016 or so, where several people were killed in Agatu, over 100. We visited Aila to take relief materials. And what we saw, even though there was a bill that was prohibiting open grazing, we saw cattle on several farmlands just grazing openly. We started doing heavy advocacy with a number of our partner organizations, even going on television at the time with, I think it was 2017, with the Minister of Agriculture actually coming on television to say in an interview that they had allowed herdsmen to carry weapons, AK-47s, to protect themselves and protect their cattle. But the converse of what we were seeing was that these herdsmen could carry these weapons freely, openly, and that's what we've seen across the Middle Belt. They go with impunity, destroy people's farms, and then, of course, sometimes the farmers will say, why are you eating my crops? Why are you doing this and doing that? And then they start attacking. So that's one thing. Of course, too, we know that the Middle Belt is some of the most fertile land, savanna, across in the country. So there is that. And there is a documentation, I think, many years ago, some of the farmers alleged that one major traditional ruler in the north had said that the land in Benue and in the Middle Belt was the most fertile for their cattle. So there are these indications, right? And they come down, especially when it's beginning to be dry season, and we're going to get into the rainy seasons. So there's this whole thing about water. They come in, destroy crops, graze, and do so many different things. And of course, once you say, why are you destroying my crops? They start killing. And it has escalated in several communities. Just before our call, I was just tracking a number of the attacks. I can't even count how many, dating back from Plateau away with 2001. We're actually just compiling and putting it all together. But the attacks, there have been more than 100, affecting thousands. And this is dating back as far as 2001. I'm even looking at figures from 2012, and it's just, the list just goes on. We've done studies in Taraba, Plateau, Benue, and it is incredible the level of damage, of killings, the number of lives that have been lost. Not one, mind you, person has been prosecuted for these killings. And the cattle-rearing interests continue to mutter threats and say they are going to attack anyone or they're going to do reprisals, and saying things like in 2018, for example, when 300 cattle were, I think, killed in Plateau, the MacBan came out and said they would do reprisal attacks. That is on record. So there are so many of these, I think that was actually recorded by Business Day, for example. So there are so many of these attacks. So the Middle Belt is attractive. That's on the one food. And then the other thing we're beginning to see, I was just tracking again and talking to a few of the people on ground in some of the communities. I'm from Kwande in Benue State. And we have, for example, some of the communities that have been sacked. We have in some of those communities gold deposits, lithium, lead. Local government, for example, too. Anye is one of the local the communities there. They've been sacked. They also have lead, and there are other minerals all there. In Plateau, for example, in some of the other local governments, in Bokos, there's a community called Tenti. I was just talking to one of our co-conveners in the Middle Belt Concern, who had gone to visit that place, and he said that the communities, they've all been they've pushed out the community. There are just a few there, and there is mining going there. So there are associated minerals. There's also columbite. There's iron. We know that Plateau, for example, was a mining hotspot for the British when they were here. They were mining tin.
Yeah, I'd like to come in there.
So there are all those interests. So we believe that it's a resource and land grab issue across the Middle Belt.
Now, I'd like to come in there.
And the attacks have been extensive with very poor government response.
Great. With all the details that you've given us now, very interesting. Let me remind you that a couple of weeks ago, the Nigerian authorities, the police and army, said that they were unsure what the reasons were for the killings that happened in Plateau State were. Now, you've just given us other instances in other states, Benue to be precise in this case. Can you talk to us the interaction between the stakeholders, interest groups, land grabbers, herders, violence that occurs in these places, especially particularly regarding mining?
So unfortunately, the mining issues have just in the last, I think, year or two, just recently come to light. Because initially our belief was it was just primarily fighting for land for grazing. There was a huge component of that. And we began to understand eventually, for example, I was in Kwande in 2023 and just heard that there's some gold mining going on. I'm from that area. I'd never even known there was gold mining. And we started interviewing some of the locals, and they were like, yeah, there is some of this artisanal mining going on. But they now said that some other entities had come in. They were seeing large trucks taking out minerals and just driving out on the road between I think Adipo, and they would go through to Boko and different routes. And a few weeks later, it's now emerged that the state government was clamping down on illegal miners. They even had a meeting with Minister for Solid Minerals, development to deal with this. And that was, I think, earlier this year or late last year or so. And they had a meeting with Delia Lake, the minister in charge of that, to try and crack down on those illegal mining activities. And it was then we began to connect the dots. And as we began to do more investigations, looking into places like Logo, of course, those places you cannot even go into some of them. So, for example, parts of Logo local government in Benue, you're not advised to go there. And for us who try and go in to do relief work, sometimes you have to seek police protection to go in and report that the terrorists who have taken over the place, for whatever, with whatever resources they're using, they are heavily armed, and you're not advised to go there. I mean, we saw, for example, a few weeks ago, even when the governor of Benue State was saying he couldn't vouch for the safety of people coming in and trying to go to those camps to support the IDPs and some of those communities, which for us was pretty shocking. Because the government, that's their first responsibility to secure the lives of people in those places, but it would appear that they are failing in that regard.
So, Ier, during the week we had a conversation and you gave a very interesting dynamic of how this chain of events starts. You talked about the fact that sometimes it starts as a, land grabbing case where people are chased out of their ancestral homes and then they're replaced by their, aggressors who stay on these pieces of land, and then eventually you see mining activities begin to move in. So there seems to be a connection between these herders, in quote, and then the mining activities that starts eventually with the people losing their lands. Could you take us through that again, intricately, please?
So I think, for example, what we've seen in Kwande, as far back as 2013, we were very much aware that there was a community in Kwande called Mon. And Mon in Kwande had been sacked since that time, and they've basically been displaced, and they are in Jatoaka and just scattered around. And they've not been returned to their homes, and those places have been taken over. I remember I ran for office in Kwande for House of Reps in 2023. And there were just some areas that were considered no-go. Mon was one of them. People were, grazers were there. I've mentioned Aila Agatu. Now, we don't have, sorry, can you still see me?
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Okay, sorry, my screen just went dark for a minute. We don't have any, intel that there are minerals, for example, in Agatu, but we know that in Kwande, as I mentioned earlier, there's gold and there is lead. Same thing in Nanyi. And like we said before, our understanding initially was that this is just for land grab, until we began to understand there are these mineral deposits and there are these minerals in the ground. And because the people have been cleared out, people are not even able to go to their farms or anything like that. We really cannot say what is going on. The Mon I particularly mentioned, since it's just been, definitely they've been ransacked in Anwase, which is also another village up in Kwande as well. They've sent out the people, they attacked, there was a Christmas Day massacre, which was not so widely reported. And to go there now is very difficult. The House of Reps member has tried to get some border patrol presence there and have a patrol post, so as to watch the places through which they come in. Because we now understand that some of these terrorist entities come in, attack, and then run over to Cameroon and then come back again. Because those communities border, some of those communities border Cameroon. We even understood that some of them ran into Cameroon and were attacked by the gendarmes there, and they came back, or they were resisted and they ran back into Nigeria. So we do what we do need. The truth is, we're citizen groups, we're NGOs, it's not our primary job to even gather this intelligence. We come across it in the course of our humanitarian work. Because you go to the camps, of course, people are crying, they're telling you, this is what happened, this is what happened. You have the stories, you have the interviews. Sometimes you're not even allowed to talk to them. I remember I went there once with a journalist. I went to Buruku local government in Benue again, to the journalist to interview some of the leaders there and find out what exactly was going on. And there was an order, this was I think in 2016 or 2017, from the state saying traditional rulers could not talk to anyone, until we got clearance from DSS and so on and so forth. These are people in distress. So these are things that for us, we just come across them in the course of our work, and that's when we start advocating and start shouting and saying this should be checked.
Right.
But the people who have the responsibility for the intel, for doing the investigations, they have all the resources. They have access to drone technology. They have all the resources on ground. The police, the DSS, the Army intelligence units, and all of that. They are failing, as far as we're concerned, in just getting to the bottom of this and dealing with it and saving the lives of people.
Right. I mean, I'm glad you're bringing up this security, all the security parastatals and all this apparatus. I mean, and then, so this issue is multifaceted, or rather, the root cause of the killings in the Middle Belt is multifaceted, whether it's illegal mining, whether it's land grab, whether it's weaponized herdsmen, whether it's communal clashes or ethnic cleansing. It is commodified chaos, right? And so to speak on that, we know you made mention of the governor of Benue State and the comments that he made regarding saying that he couldn't secure the lives of those who goes into the IDP camp. I guess that's when the former presidential candidate for the Labour Party was going to visit the IDP camp. Now, to that regard, the president have also said that that the bulk of the security is also left in the office of the president, or rather of the governors of the state. But he also called on the Nigerian military as well, to intensify efforts to end terrorism and banditry in the country. And he made this comment on the sidelines of his activity. He is in Katsina State. He will be launching, I think he did this yesterday, the launch of the 24-kilometer dual carriageway. And also he will be attending the governor of Katsina State's daughter's wedding, the 2-day visit. But is that enough? Because let's talk about manpower. There's a lot that the armed forces are there's not enough manpower, intelligence gathering, are they well equipped? Are they trained? Can they handle issues? Do they have the right intelligence? If the governor is saying that he cannot secure people going to the IDP camp, what more the armed military? Your take?
I have a very controversial view on that.
I'd like to hear it.
I'm a member of Fixed Politics, and we look at the politics of our country. And there are 3 key things that really determine how well leaders do. There's character, there's competence, and there's capacity. And the first of those is character. Part of character is empathy, compassion, a determination to serve your people. And I say this with every bit of pain in my heart, and for Nigerians and for those in the Middle Belt, our leaders lack character. And I am saying this across the board. Our governors for years have been getting security vote. I don't know about you. We are all leaders in our various spheres. We are family people. We will do anything we need to do to secure our families and secure our people. But it is very clear to us that our leadership do not consider us their people. We are useful to them when it's time for elections, for votes. These same communities that they're saying they cannot enter or they cannot guarantee anybody's safety, when it is time for campaign, when it is time for election, when it is time for one jamboree, someone's wedding, they will carry themselves with all the security detail and get into those communities. But now it is time to deliver humanitarian relief and to secure the lives of the people we cannot secure. That is one of the reasons why the Middle Belt concern was saying we're calling for accountability. How is the security vote being used?
We're almost out of time, but I have to ask you one very critical question here. And
Please go ahead. So for me, sorry, just to wrap that up, I think that the leadership, the governors, have not looked deeply enough and fought hard enough on this issue. There are some states who have organized themselves, their security outfits, and giving them the power to do these things. But in Benue, in Plateau, it's been a challenge. In some instances, in Plateau, for example, they've tried to arm the civilian joint task forces working to protect the farming communities. And they've been stopped illegally as well.
Just a second.
So that's why we also called for firearms review of legislation in this area. But I mean, that's another conversation.
Sorry, just a second, Mr. Do you think that, I mean, Ondo had his own issue, and then they created Amotekun, right? Anambra had his issue, and now there's I've forgotten the name now. I don't want to butcher the name, but they do create this somewhat community policing, if not vigilante groups that are accredited by the government. Should that happen in Middle Belt? Should Niger, Benue, and Kogi create this type of communities, and also Plateau as well, create this kind of vigilante groups, community policing to secure those communities? And will they work?
The truth is, we've had some of those historically. Now, for example, with Plateau, for example, they have, I think it's called Operation Rainbow, or well, I can't remember what the name is right now. But recently there were reports that the governor had tried to increase their capacity to protect themselves against the superior weapons being brought against them by these terrorists, and they were stopped. We understand by some security agencies. The DSS, for example, was named. Even yesterday, we were having a conversation as to what power does the DSS have to stop that. When the Constitution says we have the right, communities have the right, the Nigerian citizens have a right to defend themselves. So I think that the governors need to really look more closely at this. If a Motekun could be created in the Southwest, for example, and in Anambra, they have their own outfit, and they've been able to sort of protect their people a little better than we're seeing in the Middle Belt, those governors didn't have two heads. So our own governors too need to figure this out and sit up. They don't need the permission of the federal government to do their constitutional duty, which is to protect their people. The point of government, whether it's democracy, autocratic, number one, the reason we pay taxes and we entrust and submit to the authority of the government is for them to protect us. That's the whole point. Indeed, now, if you're not able to protect us, let us be able to protect ourselves properly. Do not allow terrorist headsmen to carry AK-47s and arms, and then you're not allowing the communities that are suffering from some of the violence they're inflicting to be able to also protect themselves. Of course, it needs to be done with due oversight.
All right, then, Ier, I really wanted to ask regarding...
let's at least give ourselves a fighting
Just a second here. I really wanted to ask regarding the Federal Ministry of Solid Minerals Development, where they are in all of this. We're talking about mineral exploration, and not by the federal government, instead by private individuals, private interests. So what have they done since regarding all of this? How do they play into the situation here?
So I would say for the ministry and the Benue State Governor, to their credit, like I said a few months ago, they issued a sort of directive banning illegal activities. Now, which is very good. The question for me is, how are you supervising? How are you resourcing the supervising of that? So, for example, in Benue, I think there's a thing called the NESRA. I can't remember what it stands for, but they are part of the agencies who supervise some of these mining activities. So they actually do go into the communities and do inspect. But again, yesterday, as I was doing some more research and finding out what exactly is happening with this mining situation, it is our understanding that they themselves are under-resourced. So they go into these communities where they're mining, they see some of these miners mining, and they are, they will say, you're not supposed to be here and all that, but they don't have enough capacity to enforce some of these things. And those miners come in, some of them come armed. And if you're a civil servant who is just doing your duty, and maybe they give you one policeman, you're not going to go and start confronting miners who are armed, maybe with AK-47s, or even sometimes they have explosives as they're doing their work. You're not going to be confronting them and chasing them out with your...
So
they need more capacity. and we just need more clarity on what exactly is going on.
I mean, you own an organization, a civil society that really also caters to internally displaced people as well. And I have to talk to you about the trauma that this would cause on the lives that have been affected by this insecurity and the death in general. 2,000 deaths in 3 months, 706 in the northern central part of Nigeria. And what are we looking at in terms of, the lasting effects of trauma? And also, do we have a crisis on our hands when it comes to the IDP camps and these communities and people who have been forced out of their ancestral homes?
We're in the middle of a crisis, and it's only going to get worse if we don't take extremely decisive action. So we've intervened, or we've supported across 14 states in Nigeria. So we even have IDPs we're supporting who fled to Lagos, and some of them even from the Northeast. So we don't discriminate. And then, of course, we're dealing with the Middle Belt. We've been in several communities, and we take relief materials. In some places where we can, we try to do livelihood support activities. But the truth is, the trauma, we've not even begun to see the effects. We've had some displaced people who kill themselves. There's just no treatment. If you go to some of the camps in Benue and you see the conditions under which they live in, it is heart-wrenching. So for me, again, that's why for me, for us as Nigerians, we really should literally be protesting now and saying, how can our people be living in such squalor while some of our leaders are living in such luxury? But that's another question. On the IDP situation, one, we need very comprehensive data. I mean, the state governor had said, oh, you could not go to IDP camps if you're coming from out of the state without permission from BESEMA and so on and so forth. That is even an infringement on humanitarian rights. Civil society organizations should be able to go into these communities. Of course, duly accredited, duly registered, and take data. We don't even have data. If you check Nigeria's data, they will keep giving you that old statistic, 2.1 or 2.3 million people displaced, and they're talking the Northeast. We have a crisis in the Middle Belt. We have a crisis of displacement across the country. Right. There are people in Lagos who are displaced, but we don't even know the numbers. And that is charged with, for example, NEMA, SEMA, there's the other one, what's it called? The Commission for Refugees, Migrants, and Displaced Persons. So we need to get a handle on the data, and then we need to begin to really look at our support mechanisms. Just doing palliatives is not going to cut it. We need to look at how to house, how to rehabilitate, and there was some work done on this in the Northeast. But apart from that also, the people who have been responsible for these displacing activities must be brought to book. Because if we don't begin to prosecute those who are perpetrating these terror activities and and imprisoning them and bringing them under the full weight of the law, it will just continue. The impunity will just continue. And more people will continue to be displaced. The last thing I would say is everything is intertwined. We have this kidnapping crisis. So people are kidnapping. Again, today I was reading another report. I mean, the reports are so distressing about Naka, another village on the way between Makudi and Otukpo, where all the villages around Naka have been turned to kidnappers' dens. A lot of them, part of these kidnapping rings are these terrorist headsmen. So they are kidnapping, collecting ransom from communities and people, using it to fund their weaponization, and come back and hit us even harder. The former chief, what do you call him now?
The national security aide
to Governor Otom. Let me just land on this one. His wife was kidnapped, and she was kidnapped, and the kidnapped victims will attest that the people who kidnapped them are terrorist headsmen, a lot of them speaking Fulfulde. Some of them working with other gangs. So these are things we need to deal with. But we're not even seeing traction on that from government. So what is it that how can we get out of this? We need to deal with that root cause.
Right.
Thank you.
When you talk about the statistics or the data that we have on the number of internally displaced people and how that number have been reeling it for years, it makes me wonder about the data that was put out about the multidimensional poverty that we saw, where it said that about 75% of Nigerians were in multidimensional poverty. That's about 134 million Nigerians out of 200 million Nigerians that we have. That's the official number that we go by. And from 2022 to now, the economic indices have changed completely. It makes me wonder how many of those numbers have died from insecurity, how many are in the kidnappers' den, how many had to sell their properties and their farmlands to reap their loved ones, and how many are now in IDP camps. It's the data is concerning and heart-wrenching. You make a fair point.
Yeah, I've never heard the situation put as articulately as you have, and with as much fact as you have brought our way. In any case, where can we find these facts? Have they been published anywhere? Please, if you can do that summarily.
I'm sorry, which facts now?
No, you were talking about the
about
reports that you were reading, those ones that you were
The
referring
numbers,
to.
the stats, the deaths, the communities.
Some of them are reports that, for example, there's another group I'm part of. We call it Niger Mourns. I mean, it's all part of this work. So Niger Mourns, we have a National Day of Mourning every year. And Niger Mourns publishes this on their social media pages. The leading organization on that is an organization called Global Rights, and they have some of that data published. Amnesty International also has some of that data. SBM Intel, which I think you referred to in your earlier report,
yes,
they also have some of these reports. Some of them are also media interviews, naming names, naming places. So some of the attacks, for example, there was a comprehensive list of stories done by some journalists' reports. And then also, we also have our own reports that we've gone into. I know that some years ago, we published a report called Do They Know It's Christmas? And it just looked at our travels between Plateau, Benue, and then also going up to Adamawa to look at some of the terror attacks. So I can find some of those as well. Another entity called ICIR has also published those. Those are also available on their website. So there are quite a number of those reports that have happened. In the early days as well, IOM and working with the Nigerian government used to publish some reports on displacing activities, but those were largely limited to the Northeast. They recently tried to include some Middle Belt communities, and that is also found on their website. There was the the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center. That's a Swiss-based entity that also does some of the reports and some of the publishing on this. UNHCR also has a number of reports. So these are various things we study. But the Middle Belt Concern is working on launching its own research works, and we're hoping that we'll be able to put out a collation of some of these reports, some of it our own research on the killings across the Middle Belt in the next quarter or so, and I hope that I'll be able to come back and talk to you about that.
Oh, we would love to have you come back and talk to us about all of these. Ier Ichaver, I want to say thank you very much, co-founder, Sesor Foundation, Empowerment Foundation. We're glad to have you here. We did say we had you on for 20 minutes, but we had you on for longer than that, but I don't think you mind.
Thank you very much.
In any case.
She minds. She needs to rest.
Thank you very much.
Thank you
we'll
so
be
much
looking
for coming.
for more.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and have a lovely day.